14 centuries ago, in the harshest deserts on Earth, an event unfolded that would forever alter the course of history. On that night, the moon, the brightest lantern in the sky, was split in two by a prophetic miracle. A celestial body that had remained unchanged for thousands of years was, according to Islamic belief, divided into two for a brief moment, giving rise to one of humanity's greatest mysteries. But what truly happened in Mecca that night? Was it simply a matter of faith, or did those who witnessed it actually see the sky torn apart? This is the story of one of the most controversial events of the 7th century, the miracle of the splitting of the moon. At the time, Mecca was far more than a desert settlement. It was a strategic crossroads at the heart of the Arabian Peninsula, where north met south and trade routes converged. Caravans from Damascus halted here. Goods from Yemen passed through its markets. The spice routes of the Indian Ocean all converged within this city. Mecca had mastered the advantage of its geography. At the center of this vast network stood the Quraysh tribe, the undisputed rulers of Mecca's economy and politics. They controlled the caravans, they defined the routes, they managed alliances across Arabia, and above all, at the heart of their power stood the Kaaba. Yet the Kaaba was not just a place of worship. It was surrounded by 360 idols, each belonging to a different tribe. Lat, Uzza, Manat, the greatest deities of their time. By hosting these idols, the Quraysh bound the tribes of Arabia to Mecca. Every year, during pilgrimage season, thousands journeyed across the desert, coming not only to worship, but to trade. The Kaaba had become both a spiritual and economic epicenter, and whoever controlled it controlled Arabia. Beneath this system lay the rigid structure of tribal society. In pre-Islamic Arabia, the age of ignorance, a person's worth was defined by a single question: which tribe do you belong to? If you were born into a noble tribe, you were protected. If you belonged to a powerful family, opportunity followed you. But if you had no tribe, you had no protection. And at the very bottom of this hierarchy, almost invisible, were the slaves. They were not seen as individuals, but as property, bought and sold in the markets of Arabia, without rights, without protection, without a voice. Another harsh reality of the age of ignorance was the practice of burying infant girls alive. In some tribes, the birth of a daughter was seen as a source of shame for the family. This practice became so widespread that it was addressed directly in the Quran. In Surah At-Takwir, a haunting question is posed. When the girl who was buried alive is asked for what sin she was killed, what answer will be given? This verse stands as a powerful reflection of the social structure of that time. Blood feuds were another unchanging truth of this society. If a member of one tribe was killed, retaliation was inevitable, and this cycle of vengeance could last for generations. One of the most well-known examples was the Battle of Bu'af between the Aus and Khazraj tribes, a prolonged conflict that claimed thousands of lives over the years. It was within such a world that in the year 610 CE, a man from one of Mecca's most respected families descended from a cave on Mount Hira, carrying a message the world had never heard before. God is one. Idols hold no power, and I am his messenger. That man was Prophet Muhammad. Until that moment, he had been known in Mecca as Al-Amin, the trustworthy. He was recognized for his honesty in trade and had earned deep respect within society over 40 years. But then came a night that changed everything. With the first revelation, Muhammad began to share his message. In the early years, this call was limited to a small circle. His wife Khadija, his cousin Ali, and his close friend Abu Bakr were among the first to believe. But after 3 years, a new revelation commanded him to proclaim the message openly, and from that moment on, the balance in Mecca began to shift. Because this message was far more than a simple religious debate for the Quraysh. To declare that God is one meant rendering all 360 idols in the Kaaba meaningless, and if those idols lost their power, the pilgrimage would lose its purpose, trade would suffer, and the Quraysh would lose their economic and political dominance. To them, this was not just a belief, it was an existential threat. At first, their response was ridicule. They called Muhammad a poet, a soothsayer, even a madman. But the message continued to spread, and so they turned to systematic oppression. At the center of this campaign stood one man, Abu Jahl. Known as Amr ibn Hisham, he was one of the most powerful figures of the Quraysh. Intelligent, eloquent, and deeply influential within his tribe, he became one of the chief architects of persecution against the Muslims. He exposed enslaved converts to their masters, severed trade connections, and fueled social isolation, turning pressure into a weapon.
Abu Lahab stood in a different position. He was the Prophet Muhammad's own uncle, yet this bond of kinship did nothing to soften his hostility. Alongside his wife, Jamil, he became one of the most visible figures in the campaign against him. He holds a unique place in the Quran as the only individual mentioned by name. Surah Al-Masad speaks directly about them. Another powerful figure was Walid ibn al-Mughira, one of the oldest and most influential leaders of the Quraysh. He personally listened to the message of Muhammad. He heard the Quran. According to historical accounts, he admitted to those around him that he had never heard anything like it before. And yet, he still chose to reject it. The Quran itself records this stance in Surah Al-Mudathir. There is a striking pattern among these figures. According to Islamic sources, they all heard the message. They all felt its impact, but chose to deny it, fearing the loss of their power and status. But the pressure did not remain on an individual level. In 617 CE, the 7th year of prophethood, the leaders of the Quraysh made a decisive move. They declared an official boycott against the Prophet's clan, the Banu Hashim. No trade, no marriages, no social ties. The decree was written and hung on the walls of the Kaaba, turning isolation into law. As a result, the Banu Hashim were forced to withdraw to a valley outside Mecca, Shi'ib Abi Talib. For 3 long years, they lived there under near total isolation. Food became almost impossible to obtain. According to reports, the cries of starving children echoed through the valley. The boycott only came to an end when a few members within the Quraysh themselves could no longer bear it and chose to oppose it. Yet even then, the suffering did not stop. On an individual level, torture continued. Bilal al-Habashi, an Abyssinian slave, was among those who endured it. When he embraced Islam, his master, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, dragged him into the scorching desert, pinned him beneath a massive rock, and left him there for hours under the burning sun. And still, Bilal repeated only one word, Ahad, Ahad. One. One. God is one. The family of Yasir faced similar brutality. Sumayya, his wife, became the first martyr in Islamic history, killed as a result of Abu Jahl's attack. As the oppression intensified, the Prophet made a strategic decision. He instructed a group of Muslims to migrate to Abyssinia. There, under the protection of the Christian king, the Negus, they found safety. When the Quraysh demanded their return, the king refused. This moment is often seen as the first diplomatic encounter in Islamic history. Back in Mecca, however, the struggle was about to take a new turn. The conversion of one man would send shockwaves through the city, Umar ibn al-Khattab. Until that moment, he had been one of the fiercest opponents of Muhammad. Known for his strength, his authority, and his unyielding nature, his acceptance of Islam shook the Quraysh to their core. But when neither words nor pressure could stop the message, the Quraysh sought another path. If Muhammad truly was the messenger of God, they demanded proof, something visible, undeniable, something no one could reject. And that demand would open the door to one of the most mysterious nights in history. That night, the leaders of the Quraysh gathered in an open area,
Among them were Abu Jahl and other prominent tribal figures. For the people of the desert, the moon was not just a distant object, it was a constant reference point. They knew it. They recognized its phases. They understood how it should appear on any given night, which meant the eyes fixed on the sky that night were trained, experienced eyes. They invited Muhammad to where they were gathered. One of them stood up and said, "If you are truly a prophet, then split the moon in two." In response, Muhammad raised his hand toward the sky. At that moment, by the permission of God, the moon was split into two. According to hadith sources, several companions, including Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, personally witnessed what happened. Ibn Mas'ud would recount this event many times later in his life. The narration describes the moon splitting into two distinct parts, between Mount Hira and the area of Quba. The two halves separated clearly, visible at the same moment to those present, and then, just as suddenly, they came back together. This account is recorded in some of the most authentic hadith collections, including Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. When Ibn Mas'ud described the event, he emphasized one striking detail. Between the two halves of the moon, Mount Hira could be seen clearly. In other words, this was not a vague illusion in the sky. The separation was so distinct that the mountain on earth appeared visible through the gap. Some of those present watched in silence. Others reacted immediately. "This is magic," they said. "Muhammad has deceived us." But there was a problem. There were too many witnesses to dismiss it so easily. The Quran itself addresses this moment. In Surah Al-Qamar, the 54th chapter, the event and its aftermath are captured together. The opening verse declares, "The hour has drawn near, and the moon has split," and then it describes the reaction. Whenever they see a sign, they turn away and say, "This is persistent magic." The verse does not merely record the event, it reveals the mindset of those who witnessed it. News of what happened spread quickly beyond Mecca. Through passing caravans, the story traveled across distant lands, from Yemen to Damascus. Some met it with doubt, some with curiosity, and some set out for Mecca, determined to see the truth for themselves. Even after this event, the pressure on Prophet Muhammad did not ease. In 619 CE, the 9th year of his prophethood, he suffered two devastating losses. His wife, Khadija, and his uncle, Abu Talib, both passed away in the same year. Abu Talib had never embraced Islam, but he had been Muhammad's shield, protecting him from the direct aggression of the Quraysh. With his death, that protection vanished. History would remember this year by a single name, the Year of Sorrow. Just 3 years later, in 622 CE, Muhammad and his followers made a decisive move. They migrated from Mecca to Medina. This migration, known as the Hijra, became one of the most defining turning points in Islamic history. So significant, in fact, that the Islamic calendar itself begins from this moment. The miracle of the splitting of the moon took place in the very heart of this turbulent period. According to Islamic sources, it occurred amid 13 years of struggle, countless acts of torture, and relentless threats. For the Muslims, it was a clear and undeniable sign, affirming the truth of the message they carried. But for the Quraysh, it was something else entirely, a moment they could not fully explain, a reality they could not easily deny. To reject it was difficult, but to accept it was even harder. Among those who witnessed the event were figures like Walid ibn al-Mughira and Abu Jahl. Years later, both would fall in the Battle of Badr, dying while still opposing the very message they had once seen with their own eyes. They had witnessed the miracle, yet they died resisting the one who brought it. At that time, the region was far from isolated. The Christian Byzantine Empire, the Zoroastrian Sasanian Empire, and numerous local belief systems all coexisted across the wider world. Within Arabia itself, there were also the Hanifs, individuals inclined toward monotheism, rejecting idolatry even before Islam. It was into this complex and layered landscape that Muhammad delivered his message, a message that did not merely challenge idols, but questioned the very foundations of power, belief, and authority in the world of its time. In 630 CE, Mecca was conquered. When Prophet Muhammad entered the city, the idols surrounding the Kaaba were destroyed, one by one. These were the very idols that people had worshipped for generations.